Abshakase, where the aesthetic shape find depth and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. A memoir of madness, magic, ADHD, and dyslexia, and of course, an author too, the author of The Neurospicy, none other than Mr. John O'Shea.
Thank you, Daniel. Great introduction yet again.
Welcome once again, Mr. John, on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, John O'Shea, live in Australia, Melbourne. Just turned 60 actually day before yesterday. But wrote the book when I was 56 and published it just at the end of last year. And it's life stories and anecdotes and information that I've learned about being ADHD and dyslexic.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, Mr. John, and belated happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, so let's start with the title Neurospicy. Is it a brilliant reclaimed term? And what does the spicy represent in the context of the neurodivergent writing brain? And why is it the perfect description for this creative process?
Yeah, I think the word spicy has a lots of different anecdotes to it. You can have a spicy personality. Food can be spicy. Um, you know, Lots of imaging around it. It's short. It's quick, and the neuro is a shortened version of neurodiversity. Um, so I just sort of brought those two words together. It is quite commonly used in the market these days, but yeah, I thought it was a better way than just talking about dyslexia and ADHD off the front, and it's also a little bit easier for me to write spicy other than neodiverse.
Hmm. Interesting, Mr. John. This book refrains a traditional writing process. What is the most significant limitation of a standard writing advice for neurodivergent mind, and how does your approach fundamentally differ?
Yeah, interesting question because being dyslexic all my life and still am, and proud to be dyslexic and both ADHD. Learning to read and write was very, very difficult, very challenging. And in fact, not until later on in life did I really feel confident and comfortable with learning to read and write. But I started off with very, very small dictionary of words that I could memorize, and I wouldn't memorize those by a normal traditional method of phonics and putting certain letters together to make sounds. I really did it via visualization. So I would visualize the word more so than understanding how it would spell. And as long as I got the picture right, then I could put that together. Um, Now with technology, it is so fantastic. I'm a huge user of ChatGPT, but when I wrote the book, I started writing it as an exercise for myself to get my thoughts down, to really get to understand and appreciate the strengths and weaknesses of being ADHD and dyslexic. But it was very, very jumbled. It was very difficult to follow. It had no path or no real um, consistency to it that would make it easier for readers. So I found a lady that was going to help me do the process, and what she would then do is give me an interview. So I would send her the paragraphs, I would send her the information, and then she would then interview me. And then as I was speaking, like I am now, she would actually just write down word for word, and that's how the book formulated into what it is today.
The term neurospicy is celebratory. How do you balance overpowering and unique strength of the neurodivergent writer while also providing honest, practical strategies for the very real executive function challenges that come with it, Mr. John.
Yeah, and it is a enormously challenging exercise for people, especially with dyslexia, that the thought process that you have, um, dyslexia is a terminology difficulty with language or difficulty with words from the Latin format, but that's really only a very small part of it. What actually also happens is that you can see only the back of the word or the front of the word. You'll make words up that look or sound familiar to you, and you'll put those words in, yet they'll be completely incorrect. So, actually, getting some strategies around being able to manage those difficulties is very, very important. And that's why I keep things very, very simple when I write, because the thought process from the head to the paper gets jumbled and gets mixed up. The same as if I'm to read something, if I'm to read something off the paper and to put it into my brain, it also is very, very difficult. I lose concentration. I don't remember what I've read. I may read the same sentence two or three times. So it is very important that keeping things very, very simple, getting words that you're very, very comfortable with, getting people to assist, I think is a big one, because sometimes it's very difficult to reach out to people to say, hey, look, I'm having trouble with this, can you help me? And then obviously with technology, chat GPT, all of the other types of technology you can use today, voice to word, where I'm very comfortable with verbalizing my thoughts, and I can now dictate, and those thoughts can go into the computer and be typed up and ready to go, or I can record them and have them um, you know presented to me in a document. So technology is definitely a very, very big key today, but when I was younger that wasn't available, so I had to get these other tricks of making things a lot shorter and simpler.
Interesting. Mr. John, can you walk us through what a neurospicy writing session might actually look and feel like compared to a neurotypical ideal? Where does hyperfocus, parallel processing, as associate thinking come into play?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I go and put some thoughts down, it's usually because I've had an idea, and if I do it straight away, then I really just write a couple of sentences. I don't try and expand on it. I don't try and make it all, as it should be. I'm really just getting that idea and then capturing the idea, because one of the things that we do is that we get very easily distracted. And so, because you get distracted, you may have a thought and a process or an idea, but then you'll forget about it. So, my process, the very first bit, is to write. As soon as I get an idea or a thought, I write that down, or I take a note, and I carry notepads with me, and I might just scribble a couple of words down. So, when I'm ready to actually sit down and do some solid writing, or some research or whatever it is, I can go back to those little points, and then I can start working off that. Otherwise, I get very overwhelmed, very confused in regards to where I should start and finish, and all that. So we're not normal in that manner. So it's very jumbled, and so it looks like it's all over the shop. And then getting someone to help me put that together, so it makes a lot more common sense. So some of these thoughts may be in different areas, and we bring them all together and make them into one.
Hmm. Yes, definitely. So, Mr. John, tell us. Many neurodivergent writers struggle with the dichotomy, right, of having explosive, nonlinear creativity but needing structure to finish. What is your central framework for a building scaffold that contains the creative fire without extinguishing it?
Yeah, and it is very, very difficult because our brain is racing. We have 1,000 thoughts simultaneously, um, uh, and it can sometimes lead you in a path that is completely irrelevant to what you're trying to portray as your message. But I think one of the things that's really important is not to be concerned about any of that. And that is that you write down whatever it is that you're feeling at the time, and then later come back and either have someone assist you, or you use technology to basically clean it up. But I don't ever try and clean it up while I'm doing it. I don't correct spelling mistakes. I basically get the thoughts down first, the ideas and the concepts, and then later I'll come back to it and do the next step, which may be adding to it, subtracting to it, spell check, grammar check, and then eventually I put it into technologies such as ChatGPT and try and clean it up a little bit more. But important to keep it in your words, in your message, and not allow that to be lost, because technology can sometimes try and improve it too much, and then it loses the flavor and the feeling of what it is. And so you'll notice in my book, it's very much like I'm talking to you, because that's the way we sort of, how I operate.
So, Mr. John, a core challenge is task initiation and transitions. What is one of your most effective low spoon hacks for just starting a writing session when executive function is refusing to cooperate?
Oh, so like writer's block?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Um, Again, keeping everything very, very small, very simple, little bite-sized pieces. So therefore, I don't get writer's block as such. What I probably get more is concentration block, and that is that I'll get distracted and be doing something, and then all of a sudden think, oh, I've got to do that, and then I'll be off. And so I might have 10 or 15 tabs opened on my computer at one time, and I'll be halfway through one project, then I go get distracted and end up in another project. That's probably the biggest thing that people with ADHD and dyslexia have. And that is not that they can't focus, because when we are focused, we're very focused, we're hyper focused, and in fact, over focused. Um, and that's why there can be so many successful people. But when we're a little bit distracted, or we allow the thought processes to get away from us, then we can become very distracted. And that's the secret, not so much writer's block, but writer's focus. And that's why I keep things very, very small, and might only say, look, I'm only going to do 10 minutes on this writing component, because I know that if I try and do more, I'm going to end up going and doing another project anyway. But I can come back, so I can do 10-minute block here, and I might do 10 minutes in the afternoon.
So, Mr. John, sensory needs are crucial, right? How should a writer curate their physical and digital writing environment to support their neurology, not to fight against it?
And very difficult, because we are taught from a certain age that this is how a sentence should be structured, and this is how paragraphs should be structured, and this is how a book should be structured. And it really is very difficult, because that's the way we think that it should be done, where a neurospicy person doesn't think like that. And so therefore, the real secret is to keep it magical, keep it open, keep it experimenting in regards to the way in which you do present it. And if you think about, Tarantino, the movies, when he did Pulp Fiction, the start of the movie is near the end. So when you're watching the movie, he's putting all these different pieces together. And when I first watched that movie, it was interesting, because it had no logical path to it, like 90% of most movies do. Now it's a very common form of doing a movie, where they split it all up and have the end and the middle and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's an important part to remember. Yes, we are different, but embrace that indifference, and don't be scared that it is going to be different, and that it is going to look different. It's going to sound different, and the messages are going to be different, because that's the strength of being neurospicy.
The strength, and thank you for that strength. Mr. John, writing is often a solitary act, which exacerbate feeling of isolation. How does embracing a neurospicy identity and potentially finding a neurodivergent writing communities change the game of an author?
Right. I don't find it isolating, but I do listen to music and have other forms of um, distractions around me because it's important. It keeps me focused if I have music playing or even the TV on or something like that. Um, but I haven't reached out to other groups within my Neurospicy network while I'm writing, but I have used other writers to help me structure it and to really just to polish up what I've done so that it doesn't it measures enough that it'll be seen that it's neo spicy and it's a little bit alternative in the way in which I write and the way in which I present concepts, but not so much that it's confusing and unreadable.
There is a powerful between a neurodivergence and unique voice. Mr. John, how does your book guide writers to stop masking their natural narrative style and instead lean into authentic voice their neurology provides?
Yeah, and I think that's key. I really think that that's breaking the mold, making sure that we understand that being alternative is not negative. It's just an alternative. And so, if a doctor was to write a book, you would imagine it's going to be very dry. If an artist to write a book would be very colourful. When a neurodiverse person writes a book, it's going to be abstract. It's going to be all over the shop, and that is its beauty. And so, when we are in that space trying to write in a traditional format, I think that's restrictive. I think the format should be as you think and as you process. So, therefore, in my case, I use a lot of verbal communication to write the book. So, I may not even touch a keyboard to get my thoughts down.
Hmm. Interesting, Mr. John. The publishing industry runs on deadlines, linear process, and often a rigid expectations. What is your best advice for the neurospicy writer navigating and advocating for themselves within neurotypical system?
Especially for people with ADHD, unless the deadline is immediate and is right in front of you, then that deadline has no relevance. Even though you know that it's there, it has no relevance, it has no bearing. And so, therefore, you might as well just not have a deadline. So, I think if the deadline was 2 months out, I would say that you have a deadline every day. And every day you've just got to do a little bit because otherwise most neurodiverse people will just leave it to the last day, and that means it's not going to be effective. So it's like cramming for an exam in the night before, or writing the paper the night before you have to hand it in to the teacher. That's a very, very common thing with neurospicy people. But to get around that, if you were to make shorter targets, make smaller steps. So climbing Everest, you don't think about climbing Everest, although that's your end goal, because it'd be too daunting and too overwhelming. What you do is you got to get to base camp, and base camp's 3 days away. So what do I got to do over the next 3 days? And then once those 3 days are done, grade yourself and then say, what do I got to do for the next 3 days? Even though that you know that the deadline's months and months away. That's the way I do it.
Writing this book must have been a meta experience. Mr. John, what is the most challenging aspect of writing about a writing process through your own neurospicy lens? Did you have the practice what you preach in new ways?
No, in fact, probably the hardest thing is telling the truth about your own feelings and your own thoughts and how it is that you process information. So actually getting to the bottom of who you really are as an individual and a person. And I think that was a really massive hurdle for me because I thought people would be judgmental of it. What would people think? Um, Am I being out, taking outside my comfort zone? So I think that was the biggest challenge for me, not actually so much the writing information down, but it was actually, am I able to actually tell it very, very raw and very honestly? And by doing that, that was the biggest hurdle for me, and the greatest experience.
What was been the most surprising or moving feedback for or from readers, Mr. John, especially those who felt seen for the first time in writing guide?
Yeah, I've had some amazing feedback. It's been very heartfelt and very warm. The emails and the messages that I'm getting after people have read it, um, they feel that they can relate to it. Um, they're thankful that someone's been able to be so honest and direct in regards to the communication. Um, it gives them encouragement that they are not alone, that maybe they could achieve a similar thing. Yeah, so it's been very rewarding in that way of receiving that feedback. But it wasn't the main aim of me writing the book. I hope that I could help some people, and I know that I already, helped a lot of people with the book just by giving them confidence. And so that's been an amazing journey and feedback from something that was quite scary. I remember just before I went to publish whether I was going to do it or not, because I was very, very nervous about the reception that it would get. And so I'm really glad that people are receiving it in such a positive way.
In a positive way, and congratulations, Mr. John. If you could go back and give one piece of advice to your pre diagnosis or pre understanding writing self, what would it be?
What would it be? Um, I'm not sure I'm still probably learning at the moment how to process the writing style and what I do. I probably wouldn't have probably tried to have written the book as a book. I would have probably said, look, just write it as a note and a journal to yourself. And then if it gets to a book stage, then okay, that's great. So I probably gave myself too big a challenge, which sometimes was quite daunting. So that would probably be the best advice I could give is to do it for yourself first. And then in the event that it becomes a book, so be it. That's fantastic. But that's another step in the journey. So yeah, I think more writing for yourself for people in neurodiverse is a great experience for them to understand how their brain operates and how their brain is different to other people. But what are the advantages and the disadvantages of being, neurospicy?
Ultimately, your book argues for a neurodiversity paradigm in the creative arts. If the literary world fully embraced neurospicy process, what kind of stories, styles, or innovations do you think we'd seen more of?
It would be amazing if you consider that dyslexia and ADHD people are probably 30 to 40% of all entrepreneurs in the world. And this is the not so successful ones right through to the most successful. Um, so we've been able to capture it in business. We've been able to capture it in technology. NASA employs a substantial amount of people that are dyslexic and ADHD because they're able to think outside the box. I think if the writing styles were adopted in regards to how neurospicy people write, it would definitely change a percentage of the landscape and open up a myriad of ways in which that information and content could be presented. And I think that with technology now, that's going to be seen a lot more in the future than what it has been in the past, where it's very traditional, very old styles of writing are now being adopted by other people that are a little bit more abstract in the way in which they think and present information.
Yes, and Mr. John, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in its third season, and my food 101 in sixth season this year.
I
Geography 101, Love Letters, Movie 101, Review Music 101, fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101, in its third season, My Baby Podcast, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. So, Mr. John, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
So Neurospicy, it's available on my website, neurospicy.life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's direct. It usually takes less than a week to get delivered. I'd love you to be a part of the journey and give me your feedback on the website because it's available there for comments and so forth as well. Love the feedback.
Yes, people are support Mr. John O'Shea because if you support him for sure, more and more nourish spicy will rise. So, Mr. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much, Daniel.
But come people, see you soon.